Nana, please come to my graduation. I realize it's been 9 years, but I really need you there. Zoe's voice was shaky on the other end of the line, and I felt the air in my 42nd floor office get heavy. 9 years. A full 9 years since my own kids slammed the door right in my face and told me I wasn't welcome in their lives anymore. I didn't say anything, just stared out the glass window at the entire city of Atlanta spread out before me. From up here, I could see 3 of my hotels, their signs gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. Ryland Resorts etched in fancy gold letters, a name that no one in my family, except for Zoe, even knew existed. Nana, are you still there? Her voice snapped me back to reality. Zoe was the only one who hadn't given up on me. She was the only one who kept calling, kept writing, kept visiting me in secret all these years. While her parents treated me like I was just some useless, outdated old woman, she saw me for who I really was. I'm here, sweetheart, I said, feeling my throat tighten up. But you know how your parents are. I couldn't even finish the thought. The wounds from 9 years ago were still there, healed over, but still tender if you touched them. They don't know. Zoe jumped in. It's my own personal invitation. I have the right to invite whoever I want. Besides, Mom and Dad have no idea who you really are now. They still think you're the same woman they kicked out of the house. I closed my eyes and thought back to that day. Tia yelling that I was just a burden, that my ideas were old-fashioned, that I didn't understand anything about the modern world. Marcus just nodding from the couch, spineless as always, never able to stand up for his own mother. You'd be better off moving into some kind of assisted living place, Mama. You'd be much better off there. My own daughter had told me, like I was just some old thing that had outlived its usefulness. I got up from my fancy Italian leather chair and walked over to the window. The city was stretched out beneath me like a chessboard, where I'd learned how to make all the right moves. Every single building, every street, every light that flickered on when dusk arrived, reminded me of the long road I traveled all by myself. Zoe, it's been 9 years. Maybe it's just better to leave things the way they are? I whispered, even though a part of me was just dying to see her walk across that stage to get that diploma that I had secretly paid for. Nana, you paid for my whole degree. You sent me money every month when they thought I had some scholarship. You listened to me cry on the phone when I felt all alone. You deserve to be sitting right there in the front row, watching me graduate with my medical degree. Her voice broke a little. Please, I need you to be there. I need you to see what we've accomplished together. I looked over at my desk where I kept a framed picture of Zoe wearing her white hospital coat from her residency. Next to it was a local newspaper with my picture in the business section. Aisha Ryland, the entrepreneur who revolutionized luxury hospitality in the region. If my kids only knew that the woman they thought was washed up now had a net worth of several $1,000,000, employed over 500 people, and had built a whole empire from the ground up after they threw me away. I touched the picture frame. Zoe had the same eyes I had at her age. That same kind of determination that my own children had never valued. She'd inherited my strength, my vision, my ability to make something amazing out of nothing. Where's the ceremony? I asked, and I could hear her breathe a sigh of relief. At the university auditorium this Saturday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Nana. Everyone will be there. All the relatives, she paused, including Mom and Dad. I felt a knot form in my stomach. 9 years without seeing them. 9 years wondering if they ever even thought about me. If they ever regretted treating me like I was garbage. 9 years building a whole new life. A whole new identity. A success they couldn't even imagine. All right, I finally said. I'll be there. Seriously. Zoe sounded like she couldn't believe it. Seriously. But Zoe, I want you to know something. I'm not the same woman they knew 9 years ago. I've changed. I've grown. I've built something they can't even imagine. I know, Nana. I always knew. That's why I need you to come, so they can see who you really are. After hanging up, I just stood there staring at the city stretching out beneath me. The phone felt heavy in my hand, a familiar weight. Tomorrow I'd call my assistant to get everything ready. The perfect outfit, the right car, the kind of presents a woman like me deserved. Tia and Marcus were about to find out they had seriously underestimated their mother. I smiled for the first time in months. After 9 long years, it was time they knew the truth. That night I just couldn't sleep. I stayed out on the terrace of my penthouse, wrapped up in a soft cashmere throw, thinking about how I'd gotten here. The city lights shimmered far below, but my mind drifted back 9 years to that small cramped house where I thought I was going to die from heartbreak. Tia was only around 35 when she told me she didn't need me anymore. Marcus, who was 2 years younger, was always just her shadow. I remember I was wearing my navy blue dress that day, the one I used to wear to important meetings at the job I just quit so I could take care of Zoe when she was a baby. Mama, honestly, you just don't know anything about the modern world anymore. Tia had told me while she was clearing the table after lunch. Your advice is useless. Your ideas are so behind the times. We need space to grow as a family. I had actually given up my whole career as a business administrator just to help them out with Zoe. I even sold my little condo so they could have the down payment for their house. I had spent all my savings on Marcus's college tuition, on Tia's latest whims, on everything they had ever asked for over the years. But I helped you with everything, I had said that morning, my voice cracking. I quit my job for you. I sold everything I had so you guys could have this house. Marcus just sighed from the couch without even looking at me. Mama, that was your decision. We never asked you to do all that. It was a painful lie and he knew it. I remembered perfectly when Tia came home crying because they couldn't make their mortgage payments. I remembered when Marcus begged me to help him with college because he'd failed a bunch of classes and lost his scholarship. I remembered every tear, every desperate plea. Every time they told me I was the best mother in the whole world. Besides, Tia continued, you're old now. You're 73. You should be thinking about resting, not sticking your nose in our lives. 73 years old. Like I was just some helpless old woman. Like my brain had just stopped working the day I turned 70. Like my years of experience, my wisdom, and everything I'd sacrificed were worth absolutely nothing. But Zoe, I whispered, thinking about my 13-year-old granddaughter who was at school. She needs me. I watch her every single afternoon. We already got a babysitter, Marcus said, still glued to his phone. Someone younger, more up-to-date. Someone who actually understands technology and can help her with her homework. More up-to-date. That phrase stung worse than any shout. Me, who had managed the finances of a major corporation for over 20 years. Me, who had raised 2 kids all by myself after their father just took off and abandoned us. Me, who had learned to use computers, the internet, and smartphones just so I could stay connected with them. Mama, don't take this the wrong way. Tia came closer and put her hand on my shoulder, giving me that fake smile she always used when she wanted something. We just need our space. You need your space too. You could travel, meet people your own age, do things you actually enjoy. Do things I actually enjoyed. What I really enjoyed was watching them grow. Taking care of Zoe, feeling useful, having a family that loved me. But apparently that wasn't enough anymore. So what do you want me to do? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Well, Marcus finally sat up. We've been looking at some assisted living facilities. There are some really nice ones with activities people your age. You could be happy there. Assisted living facilities. They just wanted to get rid of me. Send me off somewhere where I wouldn't bother them. Where they could keep pretending they were still the perfect children that everyone thought they were. And what if I don't want to go to some assisted living place? I asked, feeling the anger starting to replace all the sadness. Mama, don't be difficult, Tia sighed dramatically. Look, we can help you out with the expenses for the first few months, but after that, you're going to have to live on your Social Security check. My Social Security check. $600 a month. That wasn't even enough to rent a decent room. And they knew it. They knew I had spent everything I had on them, that I had no savings, that they were the only security I had left. But I have nowhere else to go, I whispered. And for the first time in my life I felt truly old, truly useless, truly washed up. Well, Marcus shrugged. You have to find something. We can't support you forever. They couldn't support me after I had supported them their whole lives. After sacrificing my own future for theirs. After believing that a mother's love was something that was valued, respected, and returned. That night 9 years ago, I left their house with just a small suitcase and a completely broken heart. Little did I know that that heartbreak would turn out to be the best gift they had ever given me. Now looking at the city lights from my terrace, I smiled. Tomorrow they would finally see what I had done with that social security check they were so worried about. The day I left their house, I sat on a park bench and cried for a solid 3 hours. I was 73 years old, had $600 in my pocket, and just a suitcase with 4 old dresses. People walked by and just looked away like old age was contagious, like my pain was some kind of uncomfortable sight they'd rather not see. It was right there, sitting on that splintered wooden bench, that I made the decision that would completely change my life forever. Aisha, I said to myself out loud, not even caring if people thought I was crazy. Either you just sit here and die of sadness, or you go out there and show them exactly what you're made of. I remembered something I'd learned during all my years of working. There's always money out there for those who know how to find it. There are always opportunities for those who keep their eyes open. My kids thought that just because I was old I was useless. But I knew something they didn't. Experience never retires. The very next day, I used my last bit of cash to buy a newspaper and started looking for work. And not just any old job. I was looking for something where my experience was worth more than my age. I found a small ad in the employment section. Experienced administrator sought for small family-run inn. Urgent. The inn was a complete disaster. It had just 15 rooms, half of them were out of order, and the owners, an elderly couple even older than me, were desperate to sell. Mr. Franklin Hayes was 80 years old, and his wife, Mrs. Betty Hayes, had lost her eyesight because of diabetes. They just couldn't manage the business anymore. "Ma'am, Mr. Hayes said when he saw me walk in. "We need someone who understands numbers, someone who knows administration, but we really can't pay much of a salary. How much do you need for the inn?" I asked, getting right to the point. He was quiet for a moment. "Well, we had it appraised at $50,000, but we're willing to negotiate." "Why do you ask?" "Because I have a better proposal," I said, feeling the adrenaline pumping through my veins. "I'll manage the inn, get it up and running, and in exchange I'll take 30% of the profits. And when the inn is doing well, you give me the option to buy it outright." Mr. Hayes looked at me like I had completely lost my mind. "Ma'am, you don't understand. This inn is losing money hand over fist. There are no profits to share." "Just let me work for 3 months, I insisted. "If I don't make the inn profitable, I'll leave without charging you a single dime. But if I do succeed, then we have a deal." That night I slept in one of the inn's rooms on a bed that smelled like mildew, and with the constant sound of leaky pipes. My children thought I was washed up, just a burden, that I didn't understand anything about the modern world. Well, I was about to show them just how wrong they were. The first month was the hardest one of my entire life. I worked from 5 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. I cleaned rooms, fixed whatever I could. I talked to suppliers, designed a whole new reservation system. I even learned how to use the internet not just for browsing but to create a website, manage social media, and really understand the tourism market. Modern world, huh? I'd mutter to myself as I learned to use computer programs my own kids didn't even know existed. We'll see who's outdated. By the second month, the first guests started to arrive. I had realized that our location was actually perfect for travelers who wanted something a little more intimate and homey, far away from those big, impersonal hotels. I hired 2 young women from the neighborhood to help me out with the cleaning, and taught them everything I knew about customer service. "Miss Aisha," Maria, one of the girls, would say, "you should have children taking care of you. I just don't understand why you're here working so hard." "My children are busy with their own lives," I would answer, swallowing down the truth. Besides, a woman isn't defined by what other people do for her, but by what she does for herself. By the 3rd month, the inn was completely full. We had gone from 3 occupied rooms to all 15. The online reviews were excellent. Mr. Hayes just couldn't believe the numbers. "Miss Aisha," he told me, his eyes shining, "you've worked a miracle. This inn hasn't seen this many guests in over 20 years. This is just the beginning, I replied. Now we need to expand. That's when I laid out my real plan. With the inn's profits, we could buy the building right next door, which was for sale. We could expand to 30 rooms, add a restaurant, and create a whole complete guest experience. But that's going to require a pretty big investment, Mr. Hayes said. We're going to need a bank loan. Let me talk to the bank, I told him. I have some contacts from all my years of working. It was a lie. I didn't have any contacts, but I had something even better. I had numbers that spoke for themselves. I had a solid business plan. I had the experience of managing large budgets for over 20 years. The bank manager greeted me in a pretty condescending way. Ma'am, at your age, a loan this large is just too risky. We're going to need some significant collateral. Take a look at these numbers, I said, putting the 3 months of reports right on his desk. Look at these projections. Look at these customer reviews. This business isn't a risk. It's an opportunity. And I got the loan. $50,000 that my kids would never have believed I could secure. Money they would never have trusted me to handle. 6 months later, we had 30 rooms up and running. A year later, we bought a third building. 2 years later, we had our first branch in another city. And throughout all that time, Zoe would call me in secret. Nana, how are you doing? Mom says you're living in some kind of retirement home. I'm doing great, sweetheart. I would tell her, but without sharing the whole truth. I'm learning new things, meeting new people. I'm fine. I never lied to her. But I also didn't tell her that her outdated grandmother was out there building an empire. 3 years after they kicked me out of their house, I already had 5 hotels operating in 3 different cities. Ryland Resorts had become synonymous with elegance and family warmth all across the region. But the money and the success weren't what made me the proudest. It was the transformation I had undergone on the inside. Every morning I woke up at 5:30 not because I had to, but because I actually wanted to. I got dressed in elegant suits that I bought with my own money. I ate breakfast, enjoying gourmet coffee and drinking out of porcelain cups that I had personally picked out for each of my hotels. I checked the occupancy reports, spoke with my managers, and made decisions that affected hundreds of employees. Good morning, Miss Ryland. Evan, my personal assistant, greeted me every morning when I arrived at the central office. You have a meeting with the Miami investors at 10 o'clock, lunch with the mayor at 12 o'clock, and the video conference with the Charleston team at 3 o'clock. Charleston, my 6th hotel, the most ambitious one yet. A restored colonial building right in the historic center that was going to become the flagship of my chain. When I signed the purchase contract, I remembered Marcus's words. Mama, at your age, you should be thinking about resting. Resting. While he was still scraping by with temporary jobs and Tia was struggling to keep her office job, I was expanding my business all over the region. While they were arguing over money just to pay their bills, I had donated $50,000 to a local orphanage the month before. Miss Ryland, the orphanage director, Dr. Evelyn Reed, had told me with tears in her eyes, this donation will allow us to completely renovate the education area. The children will have access to new computers, updated books, and all kinds of materials we never could have afforded. Children are the future, I replied, thinking of Zoe. Investing in them is always the best decision. But there was so much more to my transformation than just the money. It was the confidence, the feeling that every single day I was building something bigger than myself. It was the satisfaction of seeing my employees grow professionally, seeing the families who worked with me improve their lives thanks to the well-paid jobs I was able to offer. Ms. Aisha Maria, the girl I had hired at my first inn, who was now a regional manager, had told me, "You changed my life." Thanks to this job, I was able to study hotel management at night. Now I have my own apartment. I can help my family. I have a future. You changed your own life, I replied. I just gave you the opportunity. You did all the hard work. But at night, when I was all alone in my penthouse, I sometimes thought about them. Tia, Marcus, and especially Zoe. My granddaughter was now 16, and according to our secret conversations, she was studying really hard so she could get into medical school. Nana, I dream of being a doctor, she had told me during our last call. But Mom says it's just too expensive. That maybe I should study something more practical. What does your heart tell you? I asked. My heart says medicine. I want to help people. I want to do something important with my life. Then study medicine, I told her firmly. The money for college always shows up when there's a real calling. I didn't tell her that I had already set aside $100,000 just for her studies. I didn't tell her that I had already contacted the best medical schools in the country. I didn't tell her that her future was completely secured, no matter what her parents said. Because Zoe was different. Zoe saw me for who I really was, an intelligent, capable woman full of dreams and plans, not just some useless old woman who needed to be thrown away. Nana, she had asked me once, why do Mom and Dad never talk about you? Whenever I ask, they just change the subject. Sometimes families get complicated, sweetheart, I replied. But you and I know who we are. That's all that really matters. One afternoon, while I was reviewing the expansion plans for the New Orleans hotel, I got an unexpected call. It was a number I didn't even recognize, but when I answered, I heard a familiar voice. Miss Ryland, this is Sterling Vance from Central Bank. We have a very interesting business proposal for you. Sterling Vance was one of the vice presidents at the most important bank in the whole region. We had met at a few business events, but we had never actually spoken directly. The bank is very interested in financing your national expansion. He continued. We've been following the growth of Ryland Resorts, and we believe it has the potential to become a really significant regional chain. We're talking about a line of credit of $5 million. $5 million. My own children had thought that $600 a month in Social Security was all I could handle, and now a bank was offering me $5 million to expand my business. I'm interested, I replied, with all the composure I had learned over these past years in business. Let's schedule a meeting so we can discuss the terms. After hanging up, I just looked out my office window. Down on the street, I saw an older woman carrying grocery bags, walking really slowly, and being completely ignored by everyone who passed her. For years ago, that could have been me. Invisible, discarded, seen as a nuisance by her own children. Now, I was a respected businesswoman, a responsible employer, a successful investor. I had built something that was going to last, something that had value, something that proved that age wasn't a limit but actually an advantage. And most importantly, I had learned how to value myself without needing anyone else's approval. 5 years after being kicked out of my children's house, Ryland Resorts was a reality that had surpassed my wildest dreams. I had 12 operating hotels, more than 800 employees, and I had just been named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Regional Chamber of Commerce. But that recognition also came with something I wasn't expecting. The first time my children had found out about my real existence. Aisha Ryland, Tia had asked Zoe over the phone, not knowing that my granddaughter had the speakerphone on, and I could hear every single word from my office. Could that be the same Aisha Ryland who was in the paper as that successful entrepreneur? I don't know, Mom, Zoe had replied with a calmness that filled me with pride. There are a lot of people with that name, but it says she's 78. And the last name Zoe. Do you think it could be your Nana? My granddaughter was quiet for a few seconds. I could just imagine her trying to decide what to say. We had agreed to keep our contact a secret, but we had never talked about what would happen if her parents ever started asking direct questions. Mom, Nana's in a retirement home, Zoe finally said. How could she be an entrepreneur? Tia was quiet, but I could feel her doubt through the phone. Over the next few days, Zoe told me her mother had been acting strangely nervous, asking all kinds of questions about where I lived, what I did, and if anyone had heard from me. I think they suspect something, Nana, Zoe told me during one of our evening calls. Mom's been asking a lot about you. She even told Dad that they should go visit you. Visit me? I couldn't help but laugh after 5 years of them giving me the silent treatment. It's because you were in that business magazine again, Zoe continued. This time with a photo of you at the New Orleans hotel inauguration. Mom saw it at the dentist's office and nearly fainted. The photo. I remembered that photo shoot perfectly. I had hired a professional photographer for the new hotel's advertising campaign. The picture showed me, elegant in a cream-colored tailored suit, cutting the ribbon in front of a beautiful colonial building, surrounded by local officials and important business owners. My silver hair was perfectly styled, my posture was erect, my smile was confident, and I looked nothing like the broken woman who had left their house 5 years earlier. "Zoe," I said carefully, What do you want me to do if they decide to look for me?" I said, "I don't know, Nana. Part of me wants them to know the truth, to know how wrong they were, but another part of me is afraid. They only want to get close now because you have money." Zoe was right to worry. 2 weeks after that conversation, I received the first call from Marcus in 5 years. "Mama." His voice sounded hesitant, as if he wasn't completely sure it was me. "It's Marcus." I stayed silent for several seconds, feeling my heart pound in my chest. I was in my office, reviewing contracts for the opening of Hotel Number 13, when my personal phone rang. I never expected to hear that voice again. "Marcus," I finally said, keeping my tone neutral. "How did you get this number?" Well, Zoe gave it to us." "Mama, we need to talk. We found out some things. Some things about you that we don't understand." "What kind of things?" I asked, though I knew exactly what he was referring to. "Mama, is it true you have hotels? That you're a business owner?" His voice sounded incredulous, as if he were asking if I had gone to the moon. "Marcus, why are you interested in knowing now?" "Why? Because we don't understand how it's possible. When you left home, you only had your social security check. You had no money, no job. You had nothing. I had nothing." Those words hurt more than I wanted to admit. To them, I had nothing because they valued nothing about me. My experience, my intelligence, my capacity for work, my determination. None of it had counted. "Marcus," I said with a calm I had acquired in years of tough negotiations, "why are you really calling me? We want to see you, Mama. We want to talk to you. We want to understand what happened." "What happened?" The rage I had buried for 5 years began to rise like lava. "You really want me to tell you what happened? Mama, please. We know things didn't end well between us, but you're our mother. We're family." Family. That word they had trampled when they pushed me out of their lives. That word they had ignored when they treated me like trash. That word they now wanted to use as an excuse to get close to my success. "Marcus, 5 years have passed. 5 years where you didn't care about me. 5 years where you didn't ask if I was dead or alive. And now suddenly I'm family? Mama, it's not like that. We always thought about you. It's just, well, you said you wanted your space." I didn't say anything. I interrupted firmly. "You told me you didn't need me anymore. You told me I was a burden. You told me my ideas were behind the times. Remember?" Marcus fell silent. I could hear his nervous breathing through the phone. "Mama, maybe we made mistakes. Maybe we said things we shouldn't have said, but now we want to fix things." "Fix things?" I got up from my desk and walked toward the window overlooking the city. "Marcus, do you know what I did the first day after you threw me out of your house?" "No, Mama." I cried for 3 hours on a park bench. I cried because I thought I had failed as a mother. I cried because I thought I really was what you said, an old, useless, outdated woman. I cried because for the first time in my life, I felt completely alone. "Mama." "But then," I continued, feeling the strength return to my voice, "then I got up from that bench and decided to prove to myself that I was worth something. Not to you, to myself." "And you succeeded," Marcus said in a small voice. "The hotels, the success. Mama, we're proud of you." Proud? Now they were proud when I had money, when I was in magazines, when others respected me. Not when I worked 18 hours a day raising them. Not when I sacrificed my future for theirs. Not when I gave them everything I had without asking for anything in return. "Marcus," I said with a coldness I had never used with my children before, "would you have called me if you hadn't seen my photo in that magazine?" A long, very long silence. "Mama, that's not fair. Answer the question, Marcus. Would you have called me?" More silence. That tells me everything I need to know, I finally said. If you want to talk to me, you can, but you'll have to come all the way here, and you'll have to explain to me why I'm suddenly worthwhile now. I hung up the phone before he could reply. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was pure adrenaline. For the first time in my life, I had set clear boundaries with my children. For the first time in my life, the power was on my side. After that call with Marcus, 3 months passed without news. 3 months in which I continued to expand my empire while they, as Zoe told me, were living in a mix of curiosity and financial desperation. My granddaughter had started sharing more details about her parents' real situation, and the irony was both painful and satisfying. Nana, Dad lost his job last month. Zoe had told me during one of our nightly conversations. He says the company was doing layoffs, and the first to go were the employees over 45. Marcus was 43, 2 years younger than I was when he and Tia decided I was too old to be useful. Life has curious ways of teaching lessons. And your mom? I asked, though I already guessed the answer. Mom is desperate. They've been knocking on doors asking to borrow money. They even went to talk to the paternal grandparents, but they don't have much either. Uncle Armando loaned them something, but it wasn't enough to catch up on the mortgage. The mortgage? The same house for which I had sold my condo and given them the entire down payment. The house where they had told me I was no longer welcome. Now they were on the verge of losing it due to missed payments. Zoe, do they know you and I talk? I asked carefully. Do they suspect anything? Mom has asked me several times if I know how to contact you. I told her no, but I don't think she fully believes me. Plus, they've been asking strange questions about you. What kind of questions? Questions about how many hotels you have, how much money you might have, about whether you'd give them jobs. Dad even asked if I thought you'd loan him money to start a business. A business? Marcus, who had never been able to hold a job for more than 2 years, now wanted me to finance a business for him. The same Marcus who had told me my ideas were outdated, that I didn't understand the modern world. And what did you tell them? I told them the truth. That I have no idea how you feel about them after so many years of silence. Zoe was smart. At 19, she had more emotional maturity than both her parents combined. She was already in her 2nd year of medical school, secretly financed by me, and her grades were excellent. Her professors adored her. She had a research scholarship and had started volunteering at the university hospital. Nana, I have to tell you something, she said that night with a serious voice. Mom and Dad are planning to come see you. Come see me? Where have they been investigating? They found the address of your main office. Dad says they're going to show up without calling. They're going to surprise you so you can't avoid them. I was silent, processing the information. After 5 years of silence, after treating me like trash, they were going to show up at my office uninvited. The audacity was stunning. When? I asked. Tomorrow afternoon. I overheard Mom telling Dad that it was better to go when you were working so you'd have to see them. That night I didn't sleep. Not out of nerves but out of strategy. If Marcus and Tia wanted to play games, we were going to play, but we were going to play by my rules, on my territory and on my terms. At 7 in the morning I called Evan, my assistant. Evan, I need you to cancel all my appointments for tomorrow afternoon. And I need you to prepare something special. What kind of preparation, Miss Ryland? I want you to contact the managers of all our hotels. I need a video conference with all 12 of them tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the main boardroom. I also want you to invite Mr. Vance from the bank, Dr. Evelyn Reed from the hospital where we donated the medical equipment last month, and the mayor if he's available. An unusual occasion. I am receiving unexpected visitors, and I want them to clearly understand who they are dealing with. The next day passed normally until 2:30 in the afternoon. I was in my office, dressed in my most elegant suit, a navy blue Armani I had bought the month before, when Evan notified me over the intercom. Ryland, there are 2 people at reception who say they are your family. They don't have an appointment, but they insist it's urgent. Have them wait in the small reception room, I instructed. I'll see them in 15 minutes. 15 minutes exactly. Not because I was busy, but because I wanted them to understand that my time had value, that I was no longer the woman who dropped everything to attend to their needs. When I finally went down to the waiting room, I saw them before they saw me. Marcus looked nervous, taking everything in with wide eyes, clearly impressed by the facilities. Tia was trying to maintain her composure, but I could see her eyes scanning every detail, the Italian leather furniture, the original artwork on the walls, the panoramic view of the city. Marcus, Tia. My voice sounded colder than I had planned. They turned around at the same time. Marcus looked older, more tired. He had gray hair I didn't remember and new wrinkles around his eyes. Tia had gained weight, and her clothes, though trying to look elegant, were clearly department store quality. Mama! Marcus stood up quickly. You look incredible. Thank you, I replied without smiling. To what do I owe this unexpected visit? Mama, we wanted to talk to you. Tia approached with that fake smile I knew so well. It's been so long since we've seen each other. We've missed you so much. Really? My tone remained neutral. You've missed me during the 5 years you didn't bother to call, or only since you saw my photo in the magazine. They looked at each other, clearly uncomfortable. Mama, we know things didn't end well between us, Marcus began. But we've been thinking a lot, and we realized we made mistakes. Mistakes? I stared at them. They called, telling me I was a burden, that my ideas were outdated, that I should move to a retirement home. Mistakes. Mama, we were going through tough times, Tia said. Maybe we said things we didn't mean. I see. So, when you told me you didn't need me anymore, that you had to move on with your lives without me, those were also things you didn't mean. Just then my phone rang. It was Evan. Miss Ryland, the video conference is ready. All 12 managers are connected. Mr. Vance just arrived, and we have the mayor on the line from his office. Perfect, Evan. I'll be there in 5 minutes. I hung up and turned back to Marcus and Tia, who had overheard the entire conversation. Excuse me, but I have an important meeting with my regional managers and several local officials. We are discussing the opening of 3 new hotels and a significant donation to the new children's hospital. Tia's eyes widened. 3 new hotels? Yes. One in Dallas, another in Houston, and the third in New Orleans. The total investment is approximately $8 million. Marcus's mouth dropped open. $8 million. More money than they had seen in their entire lives. But we can continue our conversation afterward, I continued. If you like, you can wait. The meeting will last approximately 2 hours. 2 hours? Tia looked desperate. Mama, we actually came to talk about something urgent. How urgent? I asked, though I already knew the answer. We're having some financial trouble, Marcus finally admitted. And we thought that maybe, for them, it was the difference between having a home and living on the street. Let me see if I understand, I said slowly. You who told me 5 years ago that you didn't need me anymore, who kicked me out of your lives because I was a burden, are now coming to ask me for money because you're in trouble. Mama, we're family, Tia said in a pleading voice. Families help each other. You're right, I replied. Families help each other. But where was my family when I needed help? Where was my family when I was left without a home, without money, without anything? But you made it, Marcus protested. Look at you now. You have all of this. Exactly. I have all of this because I built it alone, without your help, without your support, in spite of you. At that moment, Evan appeared at the door. Ryland, I apologize for the interruption, but they are waiting for you in the boardroom. Thank you, Evan. I turned back to Marcus and Tia. As I said, I have an important meeting. If you want to talk, you'll have to wait, or you can come back when you have a scheduled appointment. Mama, please. Tia stepped closer. It's only $30,000 to you. That's nothing. I looked at her intently for several seconds. You're right, Tia. To me, $30,000 is nothing. But you know what is something to me? Respect. Dignity. The acknowledgement that I am more than a bank you can run to when you're desperate. We respect you, Mama, Marcus said. We always have. Really? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You respected me when you called me outdated. You respected me when you sent me to look for a retirement home. You respected me when you closed the door and decided I was no longer part of your lives. They couldn't answer. I'm going to my meeting, I announced. When I finish, we can continue this conversation. But I want you to understand something. Money doesn't erase the past. And if you want me to consider you family again, you're going to have to prove that you understand the damage you did to me. I walked out of the room, leaving them speechless. For the first time in my life, I was the one who had set the rules of the game, and it felt incredibly good. When I returned from my meeting 2 hours later, Marcus and Tia were still in the waiting room. I found them talking in low voices, clearly nervous, looking at every detail of the facilities as if they were appraising everything they saw. Seeing me enter, they immediately stood up. How did the meeting go? Tia asked with a forced smile, trying to sound casual. Very well, I replied dryly. We confirmed the opening of the 3 new hotels and approved the $2 million donation to the Children's Hospital. I saw Marcus swallow hard when he heard the figure. A $2 million donation money I gave away to help sick children while they came to ask me for $30,000 as if it were a favor between friends. Mama, Marcus approached. We've been thinking while we waited. We want you to know that we are truly sorry for how things ended between us. Sorry? I looked at both of them. Sorry for what exactly? For everything, Tia said, tears in her eyes. For telling you to leave, for not valuing everything you did for us, for treating you badly. Treating me badly. My voice rose a little. Tia, you didn't treat me badly. You destroyed me. You made me feel like I was trash, like 50 years of being your mother was worth nothing. We exaggerated, Marcus admitted. We were stressed. We had financial pressures. And maybe we took out our frustrations on you. Took out your frustrations. I sat down in one of the armchairs, forcing them to remain standing. Marcus, do you remember what you told me the last day I was in your house? Marcus looked away. Mama, that was a long time ago. I'll refresh your memory, I interrupted. You told me I was a burden, that my advice was useless, that you needed space to grow as a family, and that the best thing was for me to go to a retirement home because I'd be better off there. Mama. And you, Tia? I turned toward my daughter. You told me my ideas were behind the times, that I didn't understand the modern world, that I should move away because I no longer fit into your lives. Tia looked uncomfortable, wringing her hands. Maybe we used very harsh words. Maybe. I got up from the armchair. Tia, you threw me out as if I were an employee you no longer needed. As if the 50 years I dedicated to raising you, sacrificing myself for you, giving you everything I had meant nothing. But now we understand that we were wrong, Marcus insisted. That's why we're here. We want to repair our relationship. Repair our relationship? I looked at them intently. Or repair your financial situation. An uncomfortable silence followed. I could see them looking at each other, trying to decide what to say. Mama, it's true that we're going through tough times, Tia finally admitted. But that doesn't mean we only came for money. No. I took out my phone and dialed a number. Evan, can you come here for a moment? My assistant appeared in less than a minute. Evan. Do you remember the first time my children tried to contact me 3 months ago? Yes, Miss Ryland. It was after the article about you came out in the business magazine. Exactly. I turned to Marcus and Tia. 5 years without a single call. 5 years without asking if I was alive or dead. But a week after my photo appeared in a magazine as a successful entrepreneur, suddenly you remembered you had a mother. That's not fair, Tia protested. We always thought about you. Really? I pulled out my phone again and dialed another number. Zoe, my love, can you come to my office? There's something I want you to hear. Zoe. Marcus looked confused. Zoe is here. Zoe works with me on the weekends, I explained. It's part of her practical training for medicine. She's also my personal assistant for some special projects. A few minutes later, Zoe entered the room. Seeing her parents, she froze at the door. Hi, Dad. "Hi, Mom," she said in a tense voice. "Zoe, what are you doing here?" Tia asked in surprise. "I work here," Zoe replied firmly. "Nana has been helping me with my medical studies, and I help her with some projects." "Helping you? How?" Marcus looked confused. "Zoe, you said you had a scholarship." "I lied," Zoe admitted. "Nana asked me to keep our relationship a secret because you had hurt her badly, but we've been in contact this whole time." "This whole time?" Marcus looked betrayed. 5 years talking to your Nana behind our backs?" "Yes, Dad. 5 years where the only person who truly cared about my future was Nana. 5 years where you kept saying medical school was too expensive while she had set aside all the necessary money." Tia sank into a chair, clearly overwhelmed. "I can't believe it. This whole time, I continued. You've been telling people that your mother was in a retirement home, that she was a poor old woman who knew nothing of the modern world. Meanwhile, that poor old woman was building an empire and securing her granddaughter's future." "Mama, we didn't know," Marcus began. "You didn't know because you didn't want to know," I interrupted him. "You didn't know because from the moment you kicked me out of your lives, you decided I no longer existed to you. But now we do want to know," Tia insisted. "Now we want to be part of your life again. Now." I laughed bitterly. "Now that you know I have money. Now that you know I can solve your financial problems." "It's not just about the money," Marcus protested. I looked at them defiantly. "Marcus, if I were still the same woman you threw out 5 years ago, if I were still living on $600 of Social Security in a small room, would you have come looking for me?" Marcus couldn't answer. "Exactly," I continued. "If I were still the outdated woman who didn't understand the modern world, if I were still the burden you wanted to send to a retirement home, you wouldn't be here." "But things changed," Tia said desperately. "You changed, we changed, everything changed." "You're right," I admitted. I changed. I changed because I had to. I changed because you forced me to. I changed because I discovered I could live without your love. But I couldn't live without my dignity." Zoe stepped closer and took my hand. "Nana, maybe you should tell them everything." "Tell them what, my love?" "About the graduation. About my invitation." There it was. The moment I had been waiting for without knowing it. "What graduation?" Tia asked. Zoe looked at me for permission. I nodded slowly. "My medical school graduation," Zoe said clearly. "Next Saturday. I finished all my studies, and I'm graduating as a doctor." "You're graduating already?" Marcus looked stunned. "But you're only 22 years old." "I'm 22 because I started early, and because I had the necessary financial support to concentrate completely on my studies," Zoe explained. "Thanks to Nana, I never had to work to pay for college. I was able to dedicate myself full-time to studying, and the graduation is on Saturday." Tia seemed to process the information slowly. "Yes. And I invited Nana as my guest of honor." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus and Tia looked at each other, clearly understanding the implications. "Zoe," Tia said slowly, "we're invited too." Zoe looked at me again. This time I was the one who answered. "Zoe can invite anyone she wants to her graduation," I said calmly. "It's her special day. But I want you to understand something. That day I won't be going as the repentant mother you kicked out 5 years ago. I'm going as the woman who financed Zoe's education, the entrepreneur who built all of this, and the Nana who never stopped believing in her granddaughter." "Mama," Tia started. "That day," I continued, "Zoe is going to find out who her family really is. She's going to discover who was there for her when she needed it, and who only shows up when it's convenient." I left them with those words hanging in the air. The graduation was in 5 days, and it would be the perfect time for everyone to understand how things had changed, to understand who was really in charge. The day of the graduation arrived absolutely perfect. Blue skies, ideal temperature, and a gentle breeze that moved the curtains in my penthouse as I got ready for the most important event of the last 5 years. It wasn't just Zoe's graduation. It was my official return to my children's lives, but this time on my own terms. I dressed carefully. A cream-colored Chanel suit I had bought specifically for the occasion, low-heeled but elegant Italian shoes, and the jewelry I had inherited from my mother, but never had the chance to wear when I lived with them. The natural pearl necklace, the diamond earrings, the Cartier watch I had gifted myself the previous year. Each piece told a story of success, of recovered dignity. Ms. Ryland, Evan told me when I got to the office that morning, the car will be ready at 4 o'clock. I confirmed the reservation at the restaurant for after the ceremony. Confirmed for 8 people, I replied. Zoe can invite whoever she wants to celebrate. I had reserved the private dining room at the Belvedere, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. I wanted Zoe's day to be perfect, no matter what happened with Marcus and Tia. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Zoe called me from the university campus. Nana, I'm nervous, she said, her voice shaking a little. Not about the graduation, but about what's going to happen when Mom and Dad see you. My love, today is not a day for nerves, I replied gently. Today is your day. Today we celebrate you becoming a doctor. Everything else is secondary. You're coming in the company car. I smiled. Zoe knew I had several luxury cars, but I had picked the newest Mercedes-Benz S-Class in the fleet. Not to show off, but because I wanted to arrive with the elegance appropriate for a successful businesswoman. Yes, my love, and I'll be in the front row, applauding louder than anyone when you walk toward that diploma. At 4 o'clock exactly, my chauffeur opened the Mercedes door for me in front of the main entrance to the university auditorium. I could feel people staring as I walked toward the entrance. My posture was straight, my steps confident, my expression calm but powerful. Ms. Ryland, a young man with a press badge came up to me. I'm from the local paper. Could we take a photo? We know your granddaughter is graduating and that you financed her studies. Of course, I replied with a graceful smile. But today the spotlight is on Zoe. As I posed for the photo, I saw Marcus and Tia arriving out of the corner of my eye. They were in an old car, clearly nervous, dressed in the best they had, but which was clearly not enough for the occasion. I watched them stop when they saw me posing for the press, their faces showing a mix of shock and what looked like envy. I finished with the photographer and walked toward the entrance. Marcus and Tia approached hesitantly. Mama, Tia said, you look incredible. Thank you, I replied politely. You both look well too. It was a lie, but there was no point in being cruel. Marcus was wearing a suit he had obviously rented for the occasion, and Tia was in a dress that had seen better days. The difference between us was huge, but I no longer felt any satisfaction in embarrassing them. I just felt empty. Can we sit together? Marcus asked hopefully. I have reserved seats in the front row, I explained, as Zoe's guest of honor. You can sit where the ushers seat you. I saw them swallow hard. Guest of honor. That meant Zoe had given me the place traditionally reserved for parents. We went into the auditorium, and I immediately noticed the difference. An usher escorted me to the front row where there was a chair with a small golden plaque that read, Ms. Aisha Ryland, Guest of Honor. Next to me were seats reserved for university officials and major university donors. Marcus and Tia were directed to the 5th row in regular seating, like any other family. Ms. Ryland, an older man in academic robes, approached. I'm the dean of the School of Medicine. It's an honor to have you here. Zoe has told us so much about you. The honor is mine, Doctor. Zoe is an exceptional young woman. She is, and we want to personally thank you for your generous donation to the new research lab. Thanks to your contribution, many students like Zoe will have better opportunities. Donation to the lab. From my seat, I could see Marcus and Tia exchanging confused glances. They knew nothing about that donation. They knew nothing about my real relationship with the university. The ceremony began, and when Zoe's name was called, I stood up and applauded with all my heart. My granddaughter walked toward the stage with grace, confidence, and a bright smile. When she received her diploma, she looked right at me and winked. Zoe Ryland Moran, the dean announced. who graduates summa cum laude and has been awarded the Aisha Ryland Academic Excellence Scholarship to continue her specialization studies. The Aisha Ryland Scholarship. I had established that scholarship the year before for outstanding medical students. Zoe had not only earned the right to proudly carry my last name, but she had proven she deserved to carry my legacy into the future. After the ceremony, as people started to leave, Zoe ran toward me. "Nana, we did it." She hugged me tightly. "You did it, my love. I just gave you the tools. The hard work was all yours." Marcus and Tia approached slowly. I could see on their faces that they had fully understood the situation. I had not only financed Zoe's studies, but had established scholarships, donated equipment, and become a major university benefactor. "Congratulations, Zoe," Tia said, her voice choked up. "We are so proud of you." "Thank you, Mom," Zoe replied, but her hug was brief and formal. "Zoe," I said, "I have reserved the private dining room at the Belvedere to celebrate. You can invite whoever you want." "The Belvedere?" Marcus looked stunned. "But that's the most expensive restaurant in the city." "Today there are no budgets," I simply replied. "It's my granddaughter's graduation day." Zoe looked at me lovingly. "I want Mom and Dad to come too. Despite everything, they are my parents." I felt a twinge in my heart. Zoe was more generous than I had been capable of being, wiser too. "Of course, my love, it's your decision." At the restaurant, the difference became even more obvious. The maitre d' knew me personally. The chef came out to greet me, and we were served the most exclusive tasting menu. Marcus and Tia were clearly out of their element, looking at the menu prices with increasingly wide eyes. "Mama," Marcus finally said as we waited for dessert, "we need to talk about." "About what?" "About us. About family. About everything." I looked at both of them. They looked small, insecure, completely different from the people who had kicked me out of their lives 5 years ago. "What exactly do you want to say?" "We want to apologize," Tia said, tears in her eyes. "We were wrong. We were terribly wrong about you." "And what do you expect me to do with that apology?" "We want you to give us another chance," Marcus pleaded. "We want to be a family again." I looked at Zoe, who was watching the scene intently. Then I looked at my 2 children. So different now, so vulnerable. "Marcus, Tia," I said slowly, "you taught me something very valuable 5 years ago." "What?" "You taught me that I can live without you. You taught me that I am stronger than I thought. You taught me that my worth does not depend on being needed by my children." They stayed silent. "But Zoe taught me something different," I continued, looking at my granddaughter with affection. "She taught me that I can still love without losing my dignity, that I can still give without being used." "Mama," Tia began. "The difference," I continued, "is that Zoe chose me when you discarded me. Zoe valued me when you belittled me. Zoe saw my potential when you only saw my age." Marcus lowered his head. "We understand that you're resentful." "I'm not resentful," I replied honestly. "Resentment is a poison that only hurts me. I decided a long time ago to let go of the anger." "Then is there hope for us?" Tia asked. I looked at them for several seconds. "There is a difference between forgiving and forgetting. I can forgive you, but I can't pretend the last 5 years didn't happen. I can't pretend you didn't hurt me deeply. What do you need from us?" Marcus asked. "Time," I replied. "Time to see if you have truly changed or if you are only here because it's convenient now. Time to see if you can love the successful woman I am now, or if you only want to use the rich entrepreneur you discovered." Zoe took my hand under the table. "Nana, I think they deserve a chance." "You think so, my love?" "I think everyone deserves a second chance, but I also think second chances are earned, not given away." I looked at Marcus and Tia. "Are you willing to earn that second chance?" They both nodded eagerly. "Then we'll start slowly," I finally said. "Very slowly and by my rules." For the first time in 5 years I saw something like hope in their eyes. But for the first time in 5 years I was the one who had all the control. 6 months after the graduation, things had changed in ways I never imagined. Marcus had found work at one of my hotels not through favoritism, but because he proved he could learn and work hard. Tia had started therapy to understand why she had treated her own mother so badly. And slowly, very slowly, we were rebuilding something that resembled a family relationship, but the rules remained mine. "Good morning, Mama," Tia said when she arrived at my office that Thursday morning. She no longer called without warning. She no longer assumed she had a right to my time or attention. "Good morning, Tia. How was therapy yesterday?" "Good. We talked about guilt, about how fear made me hurt you." She sat across from my desk, no longer with her former arrogance, but with genuine respect. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think you'll ever be able to completely forgive me?" I looked at her for several seconds. It was a question I had asked myself many times in recent months. "Tia, forgiveness is not something that happens overnight. It's a process. And that process includes seeing real changes, not just words." "I understand," she said in a small voice. "And what changes have you seen?" "I've seen Marcus get up every day at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work. I've seen him respect his colleagues, learn from his mistakes, and not use our family relationship to get special favors." Marcus had started as a concierge at the Dallas hotel and had been promoted based on his own merit. He was now an assistant manager, and his superiors didn't know he was my son until he told them himself after 3 months on the job. "Excellent. I've seen you go to therapy every week," I continued. "I've seen you apologize to Zoe for putting her in the middle of our problems. I've seen you trying to understand why you hurt me so badly." "And is that enough?" she asked hopefully. "It's a start," I replied honestly. "But Tia, I need you to understand something. I am no longer the same woman you knew. I won't go back to being the mother who sacrifices in silence, who gives everything without receiving anything in return, who allows herself to be mistreated because she is afraid of being alone. We don't want you to go back to being that woman," she said quickly. "We want to get to know the woman you are now." Just then Zoe came into the office. She was officially my executive assistant, while finishing her specialization in pediatrics. Working with me allowed her to gain experience in hospital administration, something that would be useful in her future as a doctor. "Nana, the confirmation from New Orleans just came in. Hotel number 15 officially opens next month." 15 hotels. In just 6 years I had built a chain that rivaled the best in the country. But more important than the numbers was what I had learned about myself in the process. "Excellent news," I told Zoe. Then I turned to Tia. "Would you like to come to the inauguration?" Her eyes lit up. "Seriously?" "Seriously. But not as the daughter who owes me favors, but as part of the family we are slowly rebuilding." "I would love to," she said with a genuine smile. That afternoon after Tia left, I stayed alone in my office watching the sunset from the window. Zoe came over and sat in the chair across from my desk. "How do you feel about all of this, Nana?" "Confused sometimes," I admitted. "Part of me wants to go back to being the family we were before. Another part of me remembers the pain and resists." "And which part wins?" "The part that learned that true love includes respect," I replied. "The part that understood that being a mother doesn't mean being a doormat." Zoe smiled. "I think you found the perfect balance." "You think so?" "Yes. You give them opportunities, but you don't let them hurt you. You love them, but you don't forget to love yourself first." She was right. For years, I had believed that loving my children meant disappearing as a person. Now I knew that true love requires both parties to respect each other. "Zoe, do you ever regret keeping in touch with me all these years?" "Never," she answered without hesitation. "You were the only one who believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. You taught me that I could be a doctor, that I could study at the best universities, that I could have big dreams. You did all the hard work, but you gave me the tools and the confidence. And most importantly, you taught me that the women in our family are strong, that we can build empires, that we can survive betrayals, and that we can forgive without being fools." That night, as I had dinner alone in my penthouse, I thought about the journey I'd traveled. From that broken woman on the park bench to the successful businesswoman I was now, From the discarded mother to the respected and cherished Nana. My phone rang. It was Marcus. Mama, I wanted to tell you that today they named me regional manager. They're giving me responsibility for supervising 3 hotels. Congratulations, Marcus. You earned it. Mama, I know things haven't been easy between us, but I want you to know that every day I spend working in your hotels, I understand better what an extraordinary woman you are. Thank you, son. And I want you to know that I no longer work there because you're my mother. I work there because I believe in what you've built, because I respect your vision, and because I want to be part of something as big as what you've created. After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of wine and went out to the terrace. The city shimmered beneath my feet, full of possibilities, full of life. I had learned that revenge had never been the goal. Freedom, yes, the freedom to be valued, respected, and loved for who I truly was. The freedom to build something of my own, something no one could take away from me. I had learned that I didn't need permission to live my life fully. I didn't need my children's approval to feel valuable. I didn't need to be useful to be loved. I had learned that age was not a limitation but an advantage. That experience was not obsolescence but wisdom. That starting over at 73 was not the end but a new beginning. I looked at the stars and smiled. Tomorrow there would be more hotels to plan, more employees to lead, and more dreams to build. But tonight, I would simply enjoy something that had taken me 78 years to achieve. The peace of knowing that I was enough exactly as I was, and that no one would ever be able to make me believe otherwise again. Did you like my story? If you listened till the end, drop a number 1 in the comments. If you enjoyed it, you can support me by liking the video and sending a small tip. I've got lots of other life stories like this on my channel, so make sure to subscribe and check them out. I've added 2 new stories on screen that everyone loves. Thanks for being here. See you in the next one with